One of the major changes in the way a student of theosophy regards life is the fact that all thoughts and actions gradually become based on premises unknown to the vast majority of humanity. The general trend of the ordinary man or woman in the street is to base their lives on ideas placed in their minds by a materially based society. The governments and education systems of the world, unaware of or opposed to spiritual ethics, come to conclusions based upon the concept of there being just one life, and then either an eternal blankness or an endless sojourn in some kind of heaven or hell. In the West, most people have dismissed the idea of heaven and hell and have little thought on what happens after we die, preferring to shut out all such ideas out of their minds. So they go on day after day believing that they are immortal in their physical form, and not considering the fact that this material life is transient and lasts only a few short decades. We are all, to a greater and lesser extent, children of our age, and even seasoned theosophists tend to react to certain situations in the same way as the general run of humanity, whereas our worldview should in many ways be wider and at times opposite to the status quo. There would never be the slightest inclination towards violence or wars if spiritual teachings were understood in the light of what it is to be truly human, as shown to us by all the great world teachers, including H.P. Blavatsky. It is a matter of understanding the deeper levels of the human constitution that are invisible to the leading lights in science and politics and their followers. We look up to them as leaders and guides. We wear many masks in our lifetimes, but there is a central being above and behind these masks who is eternal and unchanging. Who do we become when we are quiet in our rooms or out in nature alone, when all these disguises have fallen away? It is then, when we have quietened our thoughts, that we may sense who and what is real and permanent in us. People in general are afraid to do this. They fill their lives with constant chatter, face-to-face or on mobile phones or the internet. They watch TV, listen to music, watch films and read books. All these things of course have their place, but there must be time for silence and inner reflection. This is why through the ages meditation has been recommended by wise souls. However, the Ashtavakra Gita warns us that we are bound only by the habit of meditation. Whenever something becomes habitual, it loses its potency. Meditation has to be a part of our daily lives, an attitude of mind, and a desire to keep centred in what is unchanging, in us. It is described in theosophical terms as the inexpressible yearning of the inner man to go out towards the infinite. The fact that it is inexpressible points that what we experience is beyond the world's mental conceptions, which is not able to be expressed in conditioned language. It is comprehensible experientially and is cathartic in its effects. This is the alchemy of the heart, the consecrating of one's being to the spiritual, and in time a leaving of mental grooves of routine and restrictions that material society inflicts upon us. Meditation then has to be kept fresh and alive and spontaneous. How is this done? By seeing each moment of our lives as new, and by realising that all potentiality is in the present moment, which will always remain the only reality in a changing world. The Zen Master Bankei instructed us to always remain focused in the unborn Buddha mind, and not exchange it for conditioned minds of anger, greed, jealousy and lust, etc. These are not states of mind that we are born with. We develop them by a sort of atavism as we grow. As they are transitory and constantly changing, they cannot be our real self. We are taught to follow the middle way, which can be said to be like the upper point of a triangle, not just in the centre of two extremes, but above and beyond as well. Our personalities are transforming all the time. We show a different mask under a variety of circumstances. In many ways we become like actors on a stage, becoming what is needed to achieve our ends. The aim of true spiritual teaching of all kinds is to find out what we are in reality, to become calm in the centre of the storm, to realise that there are gateways in our consciousness to higher states of being, and that if we cultivate the right state of mind, we can undo our mind-forged manacles and fly into the clear skies of spiritual awareness. Some Zen schools recommend developing what they call the Great Doubt. In one way, the Great Doubt is the time when we doubt the validity of all the intellectual learning we have done, realising that it cannot be of any value, and at the same time our awareness of ourselves as material beings begins to fade. We become what we are rather than what we imagine ourselves to be. This cannot be encompassed by words or images. This is not to undervalue the stages of our journey when intellectual learning is essential, but to understand that we must not stagnate. So there is a point in our evolution when we have to sacrifice all our intellectuality and our intellectually gained knowledge in order to move onwards, because we enter a phase where this knowledge becomes a burden and we have to understand on a higher level without the lower mind images and concepts. It's a stage of direct knowing rather than reasoning and speculating. This is when we start to comprehend what we are in reality, and another of our masks is removed. It's a kind of sacrifice, because we have built up an intellectual understanding of the path over many lives, and it is hard to let go of all that knowledge. However, it is not really a letting go, but another form of alchemy, in which the essence of all that we have learned is transformed into experiential awareness. That is the purpose of true spiritual teaching. It refines the mind and prepares it to be able to receive more of the light of the divine. To go back to the Ashtavakra Gita, it states that until we forget everything, we cannot live in the heart. And the heart is said to be the centre of spiritual activity. In The Voice of the Silence by H.P. Blavatsky, we read about the doctrine of the heart, which is the practical living of the life, and head learning, the intellectual understanding that often degenerates into dead letter. Many of our organised religions regard some book as the word of God and follow it slavishly and literally, without intelligently looking into the meanings behind the words. This causes division and fanaticism that may result in intolerance of other religions and in some cases to violence. Our outer self is said to be our personality. This is developed from the Latin word persona, which was originally given to the role of an actor on stage and referred to a theatrical mask worn on stage in ancient times. In the psychology of C.G. Jung, the persona is the mask or facade presented to satisfy the demands of the situation or the environment, not representing the inner self. We are like actors playing many parts on life's stage, none of which are our true self, but similar to the mask worn by the cast of a play. At the end of the performance, we go home as our real selves for a while, before Karma places us back on the stage to learn more lessons until we are ready to move on to higher levels of experience. As we progress onwards, more and more of our masks are removed until we become what we are in reality, which is beyond all our earthly conceptions. We then can begin to study and truly live under the aegis of our higher self nature, and not as if we are looking through a glass darkly. This may place us at odds with our fellow human beings who have a different view of life, mostly second-hand knowledge. We begin to see clearly and act in sensible and rational ways that seem irrational in this topsy-turvy world. We are aware of the bigger picture and have shaken off what was described earlier as our mind-forged manacles, to use an expression of the poet William Blake. Yet we begin to have a deeper relationship with those around us, mostly unknown to the vast majority, but exercising a benign influence upon them that will bear fruit in time. It will also assist them on the journey to find out exactly what it means to be truly human amidst all the distractions of a materialistic society.